Now, I feel like a lot of people are wondering why Drake's song Family Matters has failed so badly despite it being a pretty good song, or at least a decent enough song, but it still has not done well in this whole Drake versus Kendrick Lamar beef. And I want to get into what I believe is the real reason that it hasn't done well, or at least what I think is the main reason why it hasn't done well. See, people, they're bringing up angles, but they're only bringing up the obvious angles or the conspiracy theory angles. Like the obvious angles they're bringing up is saying that Kendrick dropped Meet the Grams a few minutes later, which killed the momentum, which is true. And then also the conspiracy theory angles they're bringing up is, alleging that Kendrick and his team, they hired bots to go, put a large amount of dislikes on Drake's song. I don't know. That could be the truth, but I'm not focused on that. To me, what I think is the true biggest thing that caused Drake's song Family Matters to fail is the lyrics. And I want to get into that in the song. Now, someone like me, I am a rapper, I make music, I am a lyricist, I like lyrical content. I still like catchy music, obviously, but in situations like this, I am going to pay attention to the lyrics, obviously. And I want to do what I would call like a lyrical autopsy. Now, for the people that don't know, autopsy, one of the definitions for autopsy is a critical assessment after the fact. So I want to do like a lyrical autopsy, just explaining or breaking down why I think Drake's biggest mistake with Family Matters was the lyrics. Whether he wrote it or the ghostwriters, whoever, what their biggest mistake was when writing these specific lyrics and, the approach that they took on that song lyrically, right? So to start the song off, Drake begins the song, by dropping the N-bomb. Obviously, that's a response. Obviously, that's a response to Kendrick on Euphoria saying he doesn't want to hear Drake say the N-word anymore, and all of that, saying how he thinks it's cringy when Drake uses it. I feel like Drake's response by doing something like that, I feel like that was too predictable and too safe. Not safe, actually. It was too predictable and too childish. It wasn't strategic enough, in my opinion. I felt like really what he should have did to start the song off, if you're gonna respond to Kendrick saying he doesn't want to hear you say the N-word anymore, I feel like you should have really taken that opportunity to come with the angle where you really just when you really just question Kendrick's perception of blackness. Because one elephant in the room that I feel like not enough people really talk about is you have a lot of people, especially in America. Obviously, I'm American. I grew up in New York. I'm clearly a black person. But one thing I do notice, though, is that in Black America, you do have a lot of people who they only have one perception of what blackness is, and it's usually tied to pain and suffering and poverty. And that's really not everybody's experience, obviously. Look, man, like there's been studies that come out showing you that more than 50% of black people live in the suburbs. Over 50%. That's the majority. So you have a lot of black people who don't relate to the stereotypical experience of having to grow up in the hood and be traumatized 1,000,001 times. I feel like Drake should have taken that opportunity to point that out. But at the same time, I understand if somebody would say that if Drake did that, it wouldn't work because Drake has leaned too heavily into that street image. Like that angle would have definitely worked better for Drake if he was still, acting like how he was back in like 2009 and 2010 when he was leaning more so into like the backpacker boy next door sort of image back in those days. And nowadays he leans too much into that sort of street aesthetic, so it really wouldn't have worked. But I think that still would have been a good opportunity to bring it up. And, it would have been a good way to segue into bringing up Kendrick's wife, Whitney. Now, I don't think Drake should have done that. But if you're going to do that, I feel like that would have created a better opportunity to do it. I think a big part of diss records that is very underrated when people are having battles, when they're battle rapping, I think an underrated aspect of it is timing, right? Like, when do you sequence the specific disses? Like, you don't want to just randomly throw disses out there. Like, it's almost like how in sports, right? Timing matters a lot. Like, if you're a quarterback, timing matters because you want to be able to anticipate where your receiver's going to be at. You want to be able to throw it to the spot that they should be able to make it to because you built up chemistry with them and you understand how long it'll take them to get to that spot, and you trust that they'll be able to get there. I think timing would have mattered in this, and there would have been a small window where I feel like it would have been most effective to bring up Kendrick's wife if you're going to do it. I don't think he should have done it, but if you're going to do it, that would have, after questioning Kendrick's perception of blackness, which again, for Drake, that probably would have failed because he's leaned too much into the street image, so that would have been hypocritical. But after that, that would have been a good opportunity within a small window to talk about Whitney real quick and just say, hey, listen, if I'm Drake and I'm gonna ask him, hey, look, is it cringe when your wife says it? Does your wife say it at all? Because I highly doubt that his wife is fully black. I'm just being honest with you. Like, I'm not a Drake or a Kendrick stan. I'm just objectively looking at this from a neutral party's perspective, as somebody who just likes the battle rap aspect of all this. That would have been a question I would have asked if I was in Drake's shoes in that same situation. Drake clearly didn't ask that, but now once you bring up Whitney within that small window, now this also would have been a time, because again, I think timing matters. This also would have been the time to talk about the allegations of Kendrick beating his wife, which again, I gotta emphasize, those are just allegations, but if you're gonna bring that up, which Drake did, right, then that would have made more sense to, in that situation, now that you brought Whitney up in the first place. And another issue I have with Drake's Family Matters is the way he talked about Whitney came off very disrespectful, and and I think that was completely the wrong approach to take. He should have approached it with a more sympathetic perspective. Like, he should, like, let's say Kendrick really is beating his wife. It don't make sense to like clown her and say, hands on your knees, hands on your knees, bro. Like, that really seems unnecessary. He really should have been more sympathetic like Kendrick was on Meet the Grams. Part of what made Meet the Grams really masterful was Kendrick, when he was talking to Drake's son Adonis, or in the other verse where he was talking to Drake's alleged secret second child or whatever, he talked to them with a more sympathetic tone, which I think would have been way more effective for Drake to do the same thing, ironically. But Drake chose not to do that for whatever reason. He chose to kind of clown her and allege that Dave Free had a child with her, which I don't know. None of us know. I think that was another mistake, is that he wanted to try to spread something like that, which is just too hard to prove. Like, if you're gonna, like, the only way that would even make sense to use would be if you like went above and beyond and like hired like a private investigator to go get Kendrick's DNA, Whitney's DNA, Dave Free's DNA, and the baby's DNA, and you ran like an entire DNA test to see who's really the father. And if you would have like incorporated like one of those like drama shows like Maury or whatever, if you would have made that part of the music video and make that a reveal, I guess it would have worked. But again, that's so ridiculous. That was just a waste of time. But again, I want to get into what I think is the biggest missed opportunity on Meet the Grams. I mean, not Meet the Grams. The biggest missed opportunity on Family Matters, which is Drake refusing to throw Future under the bus. Now, I know me saying throw somebody under the bus sounds crazy, but hear me out, right? The biggest ammo that Drake had, that Drake or his ghostwriters, whoever, that they missed out on, was calling out the hypocrisy of Kendrick claiming that he doesn't respect Drake for being a deadbeat father and all that, but then in the same breath doing songs with Future. Now, for the people that don't remember, I'm sure you remember, but still, on the songs like Euphoria and obviously Meet the Grams, Kendrick leaned in on the idea that, hey, Drake's a deadbeat father. He doesn't care about these kids. All Drake had to do would simply say, hey, listen, it's hypocritical to call me claim that I'm a deadbeat father and say that you're against me being a deadbeat father, but then in the same breath do a song with Future. All Future does, I mean, let's call a spade. All Future does is create baby mamas and pop out a bunch of children that he's not taking care of, or that he's not in their lives for. I don't know, maybe he's financially taking care of them, but he's definitely not in their lives. That's not realistic. You can't pop out that many kids and be a touring artist. And you know what I mean? And these kids are all over the country. Like, it's not realistic. He's not in those kids' lives. That would have been the number one angle that Drake could have used that he didn't use. Because if Kendrick, and again, like I said, I'm not a Drake stan or a Kendrick stan, but I'm just looking at this objectively from a neutral party's perspective. Like, if Kendrick genuinely cared about not wanting to affiliate with deadbeats and not respecting that, under no circumstances would he do a song, would he do music with Future. No matter how talented Future is, and no matter how much of a knack Future has for making catchy anthems, he would refuse to do it. But Kendrick doesn't stand on business when it's time to talk about Future. And in my opinion, that's hypocritical. It's hypocritical to call Drake a deadbeat, but then not have a problem with Future, who is a known deadbeat. That's a major missed opportunity that Drake missed out on. And I think the reason Drake missed out on that opportunity is really because Drake is a coward, if I'm being honest with you. I think Drake is too scared to throw Future under the bus because he's still hoping that somehow, some way, he can reconcile with Future, because he understands the business ramifications of falling out with Future, and he doesn't want to lose that, you know, the guy who's essentially his gateway into getting to the pulse of what's popping within the South. He doesn't want to miss out on that. And because of that, he doesn't want to mention Future. In my opinion, I think it was a conscious decision for Drake to not bring up the hypocrisy of Kendrick working with Future, because he doesn't want to throw Future under the bus. And a reason I think that was a conscious decision was because on the song Family Matters, he said something to the effect of, you know, the Pluto stuff made me sick to my stomach. We never been through it. These lanes finally found a way to rope you into it. Like, to me, it's just like you're trying to still mend things with Future, which to me is a waste of time, because Future has already clearly drawn his line in the sand. Whether Drake and his team accept that or not, doesn't matter. It's clear as day that Future has already drawn his line in the sand. He is right alongside Metro while they're doing this diss campaign. They clearly don't like you. I mean, damn, like just a year ago, Future put out an album where the title was called I Never Liked You. Now, that might sound like a simple title, but when you put it into the context of this beef and him and Metro dropping an album called We Don't Trust You, to me, the title doesn't seem so random anymore. But, you know, another angle that I think Drake messed up on was bringing up YG and Chris Brown. Like, it's like you're trying to create allies at the last second. It's a complete waste of time. Like, you haven't done a song with YG. I'm not gonna really pay too much attention to Chris Brown, really, because I mean, that's a wash. Who cares? But as far as like, I'm not saying Chris is washed, but I mean him bringing up Chris Brown, it's kind of a wash, because like they have like a weird relationship anyway. But as far as YG, I think that's a major mistake, obviously, because you haven't collaborated with YG in a decade. YG has no reason, there's no incentive for him to pick your side. So that was a really stupid and failed attempt to try to pin YG and Kendrick against each other. It's just a waste of time. And he should have already known it wasn't going to work out, because low-key, not only are Kendrick and YG from the same city and they're from the same coast, whatever, but also Kendrick plays a role in YG's career from an influential standpoint, because if anybody paid attention, YG's debut album, My Crazy Life, which was a very underrated album, that album was clearly influenced by Kendrick's Good Kid, Mad City. I mean, By Crazy Life and Good Kid, Mad City are basically the same album, just from two different perspectives. Obviously, Kendrick's perspective is like the perspective of like, the quiet square kid watching everything from his window of his house, whereas YG's perspective is the perspective of the active gang member who is actually outside. But it's still, the same concept for an album. So it didn't make sense that Drake would even try to bring YG on his side. It just seemed like a waste of time. And Kendrick, in a very subtle but masterful fashion, he responded to that by bringing in YG's best friend, DJ Mustard, to do the instrumental for what's probably going to be one of the biggest diss songs ever in Not Like Us. Another missed opportunity that Drake had on the album was an opportunity to dissect Kendrick in a more surgical manner. Like, what I mean by that is, there was a point in the song where Drake said, "You rapping like you trying to get the slaves freed," which to me was a very tone deaf approach to it. Like, especially because For All the Dogs, Drake, he already had like a weird lyric about whips and chains like American slaves. So a lot of people already were looking at him funny because of that. But then bringing the slave line back up in this context, I feel like it was a very dumb approach to the matter. Because here's the thing, right? I get what he was going for. I know a lot of people might think I'm tweaking right now, but I get what he was going for, but the execution was terrible. Like, what he's really trying to get at is, what he's trying to say is Kendrick uses black pain and black suffering and, the worst parts of the black experience, he uses it as a marketing tool. Now, I'm not necessarily saying that, but I'm saying that that's low-key what Drake is trying to get at, or his ghostwriters, whoever, that's what they're trying to get at. But for whatever reason, they just didn't do a good enough job explaining. They instead went with this simple lyric about you're trying to get the slaves free, which was just, a terrible approach. Just a terrible approach. Because you could have broken that down in a more surgical fashion, just saying, hey, listen, Drake could say that after all these years, he could have made an argument that after all these years, Kendrick has never really put his money where his mouth is as far as trying to start a political movement, trying to make like a serious change. And some people may say that's not really Kendrick's job. He doesn't have to. That's fair. But when you go back in Kendrick's discography on songs like High Power, he was talking as if he wanted to be that guy. He was talking as if that's what he really was trying to do. As if he was saying things like, hey, we need to start an all-black party and all these different things, giving you the impression that he wanted to be some sort of political figure or political leader or some sort of revolutionary, right? Especially because he idolizes Tupac so much, right? Like, he was talking as if he wanted to carry that torch and, go farther with it as far as trying to be that revolutionary. But if we're being honest, like I said, I'm not a Drake stan or a Kendrick stan. I'm just looking at this objectively. If we're being honest, when you look at Kendrick up until this point, he hasn't really taken any major stands publicly outside of the music, which again wouldn't be a problem if he wasn't initially talking as if he wanted to be that revolutionary guy. So again, I feel like with Drake and his team or ghostwriters, whoever, what they were trying to say is Kendrick is a fake activist because he, after all these years, despite how much of a good game he talks on these songs, he's never really gone out of his way to make any major changes within Black America and within his community within California. And from there, I think that would have been not only a more well-articulated way to sort of get that point across, but when he goes into the next lyric saying, hey, you don't even go back to your hood and plant no money trees, yeah, that's kind of clever, but if he would have said that other thing first, I think that would have helped that hit harder, especially if he would have taken the time to talk about Kendrick's survivor's remorse, right? Because remember, a big chunk of, To Pimp a Butterfly was Kendrick saying that he has survivor's remorse for getting out of Compton, right? Now, personally, I'm not like a big believer in like survivor's remorse, really, like, but that's neither here nor there. But if you have survivor's remorse, the easiest solution is to try to bring as many of your people as many people as you can up with you from the place that you're feeling guilty about making it out of, right? Which is, in Kendrick's case, is Compton. Now, when you look at Kendrick's career up until this point, Kendrick has never put any artist from Compton on, or really any other artist outside of Baby Keem. The only artist Kendrick has gone out of his way to put on in a decade or in 15 years has been his cousin, Baby Keem, who's not even from Compton. Now, if Drake and or his ghostwriters had any common sense, like if they were smart, that would have been a great angle to go into. The angle as far as saying, hey, you've never really gone out of your way to try to help save any of these people and put them on. And I know there's talented artists in Compton. Like, it don't matter what city you go to, there's talented artists everywhere. But I'm sure that there's plenty of talented artists in Compton, talented lyricists who Kendrick could have helped pull up. But I mean, for whatever reason, he never really did it. And I feel like if Drake brought that up, that could have helped more. Now, again, I'm not saying Drake was gonna ever win this beef realistically, but I'm just saying some of these angles would have maybe given him a better chance, or at least it would have made it look a little more competitive. But it is what it is, Another mistake I thought Drake made lyrically in the song was, spending too much time making short jokes. Now, if Drake had done some of the tactics that I said earlier in this video and then rope in like short jokes, I feel like it would have worked better, because like it would have been, it would have hit harder, because it's like, okay, on top of mocking him, you're still like breaking him down as a person. Because that's what Kendrick did when he attacked Drake. He mocked him and said, hey, what is it, the braids and all the other stuff he said. But then he also still broke Drake down as a person to make you question Drake as a person and look at him funny, give him the side eye, right? And I feel like Drake just completely missed, Drake and or his writers, they completely dropped the ball on that. They just missed it. And like I said, it's just a major missed opportunity lyrically. And another issue I feel like Drake made was Drake spent too much time talking about other people, which again, if Drake had done some of the things I mentioned in this video, it wouldn't have mattered. But the fact that he really didn't spend much time breaking down Kendrick, and then he immediately jumped off and started dissing everybody else, like, to me it felt like it just felt like he was trying to hurry up and get away from Kendrick and try to shoot back at a bunch of other people. And a bunch of these other people are kind of easier to diss than Kendrick. And I just feel like, again, a major missed opportunity. I feel like there's a lot of angles that Drake could have gone with, but the problem is, whether it's Drake or his ghostwriters, whoever is responsible for these songs, I feel like whoever's writing these songs, they're not a cerebral enough thinker to really be able to bring up the points that I brought up in this video. And they only stuck to like just surface level disses, just surface level disses, just calling Kendrick short, which really doesn't, that's really not gonna move the needle when Kendrick is breaking you down as a person. He's alleging that you have a secret daughter. He's pointing out how you lean on a lot of artists from Atlanta and basically compared you to a colonizer. Like it's levels to what's going on here. And Drake and his team, they weren't thinking at the level that Kendrick was thinking at. And I feel like, again, it's just a missed opportunity on their part. And like I said, I don't have a dog in the fight, but I think it's just interesting kind of seeing what Drake did wrong in this whole situation. And I might even need to talk about what Drake did wrong on Taylor Made Freestyle, but I might save that for another time. But again, if you watch this far, I appreciate it. Hit the like and subscribe button. Let me know in the comments if you think what I'm saying makes sense. And let me know in the comments, do you think Drake ever stood a chance in this? Or do you think no matter what he could have done, even if he had done everything I said in this video, do you think no matter what, Drake was gonna be, dead in the water regardless because of just all the ammo that's out there against him? Because that's really something I was thinking about too, is like, no matter what Drake says, even if he had gone with some more well thought out angles, there's just so much ammo against Drake that he was probably gonna lose regardless. But still, let me know in the comment section below, what do you think about the whole situation? And do you think there's another reason that Drake's song Family Matters failed?